The Democratic Socialists of America ran 0 candidates. Why do I say they ran 0 candidates? The DSA is not a party. It's not an official party. It doesn't run as a party. It doesn't run a candidate. It endorses a candidate. So do newspapers, the New York Times. I live in Glens Falls, the Post Star. I lived in Scotia for a little while. You know what I mean? Schenectady. So you have the Gazette. You know what I mean? So it's like they endorse. I mean, does Burger King endorse somebody? Does Coca-Cola endorse somebody? I've seen people endorse Nike products. Does that mean Nike products endorses somebody? So why do I throw it to you like that? Because corporations are corporations. The Democratic Party is a company. The Republican Party is a company. It's organized. It has a statement of intent. It's traditionally been used for elections. But I am saying, as we learned from the Lily White primary in the 1800s, building into the 1900s, Jim Crow South, political parties are private organizations that choose the white business owner candidate so that you can't choose a candidate other than them. So they, the rich, organize around one individual that will have their interests versus you, many littles, finding the popular guy that you want to put up. You dig what I'm saying? So they the company puts the candidate up so you can't afford to challenge them. You know what I'm saying? That's how our political party system works. So when we're talking about having DSA candidates, here we are in 2026. We are not talking about the Lily White primary down in the South. We're talking about 2026, where candidates who are promoting, hear me out, they're promoting food that's affordable, shelter that's affordable, education that's available, medicines and hospitals that are around and available and you have access to. You know, that's not weird shit. That is when you are taught about the basic human needs of biology. It's food, shelter, and protection from the elements. We say clothing, but that's the basics, man. Drinking water. We're like 80% water ourselves. You know what I'm saying? When we don't have access to it. I mean, one of the big anecdotes that I hear about like the dark ages is that they were drinking beer and mead, and that was how they got their clean hydration. You know what I mean? I've been hearing people say DSA, 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 DSA. Who the fuck you talking to? Who are you talking about? People are endorsed by a myriad of people. What isn't being endorsed is a message, is a message, is a message. I'm listening to mainstream media. I'm listening to the secondary media of pundits. I'm listening to the third media of pundits. You know what I mean? Where it's like you have people who get paid for the propaganda, people who believe that if they propagate this propaganda, they're doing the right thing. And then you have third people who are just repeating what they hear because that's what they learned. This isn't how America works. This isn't how government works. This isn't how communication should work. You know what I'm saying? My big kick has been punditry. When I'm watching Meet the Press, when I'm watching, I don't really watch, but CBS this week or ABC this week, uh, CBS's Face the Nation, when I'm watching the weekend shows, what are the weekend shows doing? They're speaking to pundits. When somebody shows up on Morning Joe, the other pundits are watching Morning Joe because that's the game that's played. You know, they watch Pod Save America. They watch The Bulwark. And I'm saying this, and my big critique is on the Mayday Network. I think Michelle Kenney's a fucking idiot. She's a capable woman, but she shouldn't be talking to people about politics, policy, or any of this shit. She doesn't get it. She's a TV watcher. She wants to be cool with the clique of people she identifies with. That has nothing to do with research. It has nothing to do with actual knowing things. It's just she watches the same shit the pundits watch to learn what to say so they can be current. Um, same thing with rap. Same thing with rap. You always want to listen to the new heads, so you can be current on the new slang. You want to be current on what's trending, what's cool, what's fat, what's popping. You know what I mean? I'd say other stuff, but I don't feel like rap and or I don't feel like rock and like country have that kind of constant evolution dynamic. You know what I'm saying? I just don't. But like I say, you constantly listen to rap, you listen or from the hip hop community, and you're constantly learning new ways to speak, to communicate, to dialogue. Whereas rock and country, I guess, as I'm saying that in modern parlance, rock and country are more white oriented, and through the study of American white culture as a whole, you know what I mean. There's a lot of like fit in, do the thing, even standing out. You know, it makes me think of when Madonna was big and she had the whole like a virgin gimmick where she'd be lacy, but she'd be leathery and she'd be wild and twisty, wild hair. And they'd be going around doing interviews with people, who were digging Madonna, and they'd be dressed exactly like her in her new iteration of like a virgin, and all these people who are expressing themselves were dressed exactly like, I don't know. This is just who I am. This is how I've always dressed. This is me. And it's like, bro, you bit onto a gimmick, man. You bit onto specifically her gimmick. You know what I mean? We don't have honest discussions. We keep tagging DSA, Democratic Socialists of America, onto progressive Democrats who are running on a Democratic ticket on the company of Democratic Party. They're running through that party. We're giving credit to DSA, an organization that is no different than a newspaper, is no different than a celebrity. Like if Kelly Cuoco, you know what I'm saying, endorsed somebody, that's the same as what the DSA is doing. They aren't running a candidate. They aren't kicking out money. They aren't taking from their coffers to put them in. They're fundraising as a name. The candidates that we are attaching DSA to are not necessarily Democratic Socialists. Some of them are. Most of them are not. As I'm thinking of it, I said most, but I believe like maybe 5 out of 9 have been like, all right, you're running with me. This is me. I don't have specifics. That was just an idea I had in my head. We don't openly address race in our political conversations. We accept what white people talk about as the conversation. We listen to pundits talk about DC as if it's the conversation. I was listening. First of all, there are black communities that have no power, have had no power for 2 weeks. Indiana is fucked right now. And hasn't made your news. I know I heard a lot about Natalie Harp. You know what I'm saying? I know I heard a lot about Natalie Harp. That is a government problem. That we have insurgents in our executive branch that has no function. We don't know how or why this person is in the role. We don't know how or why they are still there. We hear rumor, we hear conjecture, we hear little bits of gossip as people try to wield their power inside with gossiping. I'll talk on that. I have people who, when I'm messaging back and forth with them, they're telling me about being 2 and 3 tables away from people like Stephen Miller or name drop your senator, just chilling in a restaurant. And then They're messaging me about things that they are in the center of because they don't want their face attached to it. They don't want their name attached to it because they don't want to learn their space. I can write about that shit all day. Nobody's coming to Hudson Falls, New York to take me away from my fucking John Street house for talking about something down the coast. You know what I'm saying? We aren't having real conversations. I was listening to Tara Palmieri, absolute love for Tara Palmieri. I think she does great. She does great journalism. When she has guests on, I see her kind of chameleon into the guests so that she can get what she gets from them. You know what I'm saying? In the dialogue, in the conversation, she kind of falls into their kayfabe to pull truths out. And that's something that I appreciate. But I listened to her the other day. I mean, yesterday. Fuck, I should know the guy's name. As soon as someone says Bulwark, bing, I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck. Neil Libs. You know what I'm saying? I saw a thing from Jonathan V. Last, who was writing an article in the Triad on Substack, and he was like, "What if I told you Roger Stone is behind the DSA?" Roger Stone. So Jonathan V. Last from the Bulwark can't quite grasp his head around the DSA versus the Democratic Party, as the Bulwark is, being never Trumpers. They kind of endorse the Democratic Party. But the Democratic Party, if you do the work, is the former Republican Party, because all of the Republicans who are not MAGA switched parties. So all of the ignorant shit that they brought over, that they learned from TV, that they learned from listening to the David Axelrods and listening to the James Carvilles, all those idiot things, those are what's in these Democrats, former Republican people's heads. They grew up in a kayfabe. They grew up in a narration. They grew up in a storyline that doesn't exist, that doesn't contain black people outside of a box and a demographic and maybe some KTEL records that they saw in commercials on Sunday afternoons growing up. We've missed who America is. America's eclectic. The American South, the former antebellum, is completely fucked, because I talk about I have Christian people who I grow up with, I live around. I'm around them. We're in a community together. I have people who are Jewish who I grew up around. You know what I mean? We live near each other. We interact. I have people who found the Mormon church in high school, and they lived their Mormon lives just as they practice the book, you know what I'm saying? All that stuff. When I think about religion, organized religion, I have my friends that devoutly practice, that devoutly go to church Sundays, Wednesdays, evenings. I have friends that regularly practice their Jewish faith. I don't have a lot to speak on it because it's not something I practice. You know what I mean? They go, they do their Shabbat, they do their whatnot. You know what I'm saying? And it is very genuine. It is very genuine. My friend who like I said, I have a friend. She grew up in Glens Falls with me. She found Mormonism, I want to say maybe in high school. I think it was after junior high. Yeah, like I went to Whitehall and I came back to Glens Falls, and this was her jam. She was seeing a dude named Adam. But I read a lot about Jenny Gage stuff. Like I share a lot of Jenny Gage stuff, not so much on Substack, but when I bounce over to Facebook, I'm like, blah, blah, blah. And my friend, who is a Mormon, she found Mormonism when she was in school. She says, this person's making this shit up. Now, Jenny Gage, she's out in like Arizona, Utah, that area. You know what I mean? Completely different world than us here in the Adirondack Mountains. My friend said that Jenny Gage is fully fucking lying. Jenny Gage is my age. She has an entire lifetime, 40 plus years of living in that world where she was in a constant hustle of being owned and making appearances for everybody else. My friend here, who legitimately opens the Book of Mormon, celebrates Jesus as it's written, as it's taught by her people, is a completely different world than the world that Jenny Gage comes in. Shit, that's why I crack out on Jenny Gage. It's like listening to this other dimension. But that's why I listen to Karen Hunter and Greg Carr the same way. It's like listening to this other dimension. This is not a black area. But you got black people. You got mixed people everywhere. Mixed, black mixed, Hispanic mixed. You know what I mean? You got people who, and they don't always admit it, but they're mixed with different variations of Arab, but they pass. You know what I'm saying? We're diverse, but we're not diverse. You go 45 minutes south, and when I say 45 minutes, you have to drive past the very, very white Saratoga Springs. But then you get down to Albany, Schenectady, Troy. That's where the black people live in our area. You know what I'm saying? Down around the city. Up here in the woods, we're starting to get them. But I always make the joke that when people move here from the city, all they do is bitch about how quiet it is, how there's nothing to do. You come here to spread out. You come here to chill out. This isn't the place you come to party. This is the place you come to grow, to live, to exist, to have a quiet existence and, safely do your thing. Because we got farms, we got beef, we have fish, we have no data centers. And even though I'm not a fan of Kathy Hochul, she don't come to upstate. Bringing it back to the DSA. This has really been my bugaboo, in the point where I've done my own research on other things. I've had other topics. I'm cracking out on Beverly Hills 90210 right now, being I'll be 49 this year, being an almost 50-year-old dude who was in 7th grade during season 1 of Beverly Hills 90210. It's fun for me to explore the content. Like I keep saying the same things. Pete and Pete shorts were on Nickelodeon. In this environment, Nicktoons didn't exist. Grunge didn't exist. Nirvana Nevermind came out in like September of 91, the year that 90210 came out. But it wasn't big. It hadn't been discovered. It hadn't been everywhere. You know what I mean? What was on MTV at that time? Huey Lewis and the News was trying to follow up on sports. Genesis was finally putting out a new album, but they were old. Like, I was grateful when grunge happened, because it rock and roll was getting stale, and all the people that were edgy in 81 and 79 in 91 were older, not edgy. We were just used to seeing them. Back to DSA. Food, shelter, clothing, medicine, education. Food, clothing, shelter, medicine, education. That's a marketing message. Food, shelter, clothing, medicine, education. That is what these Democrats are running on, that the DSA is endorsing, but they are Democratic candidates. They are running with the backing of the Democratic Party. Their message is food, shelter, clothing, medicine, education. That's not DSA. They aren't talking about eliminating the Senate. They aren't talking about eliminating police. You understand what I'm saying? So, by everybody tying DSA onto these candidates, the few things that they vibe on are being ignored because they want to break out these extreme things, which have value in a discussion. But they aren't having an honest discussion. When I'm listening to Morning Joe freak out about the DSA, when I'm listening to, I don't know, name your talking head, freak about the insurgent DSA, I want you to think about what's being interpreted. Food, shelter, clothing, medicine, education. That is the message of the candidates. But just like Hassan Piker, I got to go make myself some new coffee here. But just like how they keep taking Hassan Piker and taking his quotes about 9/11 and his quotes about America having deserved it, they're taking those quotes out of context. And in doing so, they're acknowledging the context between it. They just say America deserved to get attacked on 9/11, but they don't give you the history that's behind it. They don't give you the history that America's been fucking with the Middle East. And the people who always smile with you aren't always your friends. Right now, we are in complete partnership with Saudi Arabia in the Middle East. 9/11 happened because of the Saudis. Like we can prove it. We can point to it. We have information. We have details. Do any of your talking heads have any of the information and details about DSA candidates? They can't. Because a DSA endorsed candidate is different than a DSA candidate who is running on a DSA ticket, which there are zero. There are zero. And I'm not about to knock Walter Rain, my guy. But the insistence on Walter Rain to keep naming these people as DSA candidates is not helping anybody. Call them progressive. Call them social program leaning. But even using the word socialist is misleading. I mean, what's the difference between, calling a DSA candidate a socialist candidate in the way that the Republicans are going Marxism, socialism, communism? They're using fucking words. It's no different than walking up to a dude and calling him a fag and just trying to make him feel bad about himself. It's no different. Does it matter who that guy fucks? No. Does it matter what he looks at when he's gooning? No. It has no relevance. It has no context. It's an intellectual thing. It's not a part of reality. We aren't having honest conversations. Our media environment is made for pundits. Our media environment is made for pundits. I was listening to Jon Favreau. I don't know, man. All that. I know Gay John wasn't on there. when I was listening. Maybe he was. Fucked his name. John Lovett. Anyway, I was listening to the Obama people talk about, like, David Plouffe would go on, David Axelrod would go on, and whatever their statement was on Morning Joe was the talking point of the day, whatever their statement was on this. And that got me thinking, I'm not new. I understand a little bit of hustle. Because when you walk into an environment, people only know what you give them, or they know what they've been given. And I'm at a point now when I am watching media, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for, what is the message? Who are you talking to? Who's repeating it? We got the receipts. We got the receipts. We got the receipts. I attribute that to Wajahat Ali. Because when I first started tuning into Wajahat Ali's Substacks, he would always do the drinking the milkshake of Daniel Day O'Connor. And he would always do, you don't believe me? I come with the receipts. And then the Wolfpack has receipts. And then I've Had It has the receipts. So you start to catch on to who is watching who as money starts spreading. And I say money, meaning a message which has lucrative properties. Money. Spreading the money. Money is an intellectual property. It's an intellectual concept. When I'm talking to the children, and of course they're a few years older, so they understand currency as it works now. But I tried to give the little girl a $10 bill for her 5 and her 5 ones. She says, I have this many money. Why would I want your 1? I'll keep my 10. We have that kind of conversation all the time. And we repeat them, repeat them, repeat them, repeat them. We love Tim Miller. We love the Johns. We love the Bulwark. But we don't. We tune into Nicole Wallace for our favorite people and friends. And it is people who are giving their message as the message as they heard it. Y'all don't understand hustle culture. Hustle culture isn't a script. Hustle culture is thinking fast. The more you know. We're a part of hustle culture now. It's all a con. It's all a con. I was listening to an interview with Karis One, Talib Kweli, and Tef Poe. Karis One, the blast master, the teacher. South Bronx, the OG of new rap, modern rap, post-disco rap. He's talking about, what more do I need? He lives in South Bronx. When he's in the Bronx, he gets respect. He has a place to sleep. He has a place to eat. He has a place to whatever. KRS One is one of the most humble dudes while recognizing the magnanimity of who he is and his impact of his life. You know what I'm saying? His impact on the global hip-hop community. But when he's talking, he's always talking from the people. We don't talk about from the people anymore. We aren't talking about the people to the people. Now we're all included in this DC reality show. You will never hear me say, Trump did this. Trump made the decision to do this. Trump and Natalie Hart is the equivalent of giving an AI a thumb drive outside of the computer so that he's functioning thinking that his program is running while the program runs without him. That's Natalie Hart and Donald Trump. They have no impact. He has no impact. She has a detrimental impact on the office. We're not having the right conversations. We aren't having the right conversations about race in America. It's made up. Race is made up. It's an American product. It's an American cultural product. When I'm watching the news, when I'm watching media, and I'm listening to, for example, Kristen Welker, a brown-skinned woman, bully every guest into denouncing Muslims, into denouncing Black people, into denouncing cultures other than the accepted television caricature of whiteness in America. There is no standard. There is no standard. And we all have our modern life. But me leaving Hudson Falls, New York, going to a similar demographic in Florida is still going to be a culture shock. Going to a similar demographic in Kentucky, a similar demographic in Arizona or Illinois, it's still going to be a culture shock. Me, I love the history of where I'm sitting. Love it. Revolutionary War. Like when you talk about 425, hey Sandra, good morning. I have 520 here in New York. When we're talking about where we are, the house that I'm in, the property that I'm on predates the Revolutionary War. You know what I'm saying? Solomon Northup, his house is 3 miles down that way. You know what I mean? He used to travel up Route 4 to Kingsbury. This was Kingsbury. He used to travel up what is now Route 9, down to Saratoga Springs to play his fiddle. Beep, 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 beep. There's history here. That's actually why I point out, I like to talk. You may not know this. So I talk a lot at work to a lot of people who have no idea the value, the legacy of the building that we stand in. So I explain to them, that's why most of the people, and I'll point around the building and I'll point to my face, look like this. Because French Canadians came from the north and Irish came over here to be labor. They were mostly like stone cutters and stuff like that, you know, physical labor, treated like shit. But the French Canadians, the Irish, the Iroquois, they all kind of mingled in this area. You know what I mean? And then as people immigrated in, you know, we got a little bit more diversity. But the base model of Glens Falls, New York is this. You can find them everywhere. You can find them at gas stations. You can find them at grocery stores. You can find them at the bank. You know what I mean? The base model of Glens Falls looks like this. But that's Glens Falls. We have, I mean, I can tell you back to the Iroquois who were fishing for sturgeon in the Hudson River, who are, you know, they actually where I work, the South Glens Falls like dam that's right there across the South Glens Falls Bridge. That was the meeting place for marketing, meaning people would bring their trades, their baubles, and that's where they would integrate. So while Glens Falls, New York, Wings Falls at the time started literally where I work, it was the marketplace long before that with the Mohegans and the Mohawks. But that's me. That's me being in the one place that I belong from. I don't know where all y'all are from. I want to appreciate all you guys that are in the chat. I do appreciate you being here. One of the most tragic things about taking this live video and publishing is that I can't take this chat with me, which is one of my biggest problems with the Substack joint is I want to take y'all too, because what I'm saying is whatever. It's what y'all say that makes the big deal. I'll talk whether the camera's on or not. I'll talk whether anybody's in the room. I'll have people upstairs opening doors because they'll hear my voice and think I'm talking to them, in which I'll have to yell to them, Nazca, go ahead and shut that door. I'm not talking to you. I'm just talking. I'm just talking. We don't have Allie Hart. Thank you. Thank you for that. Um, we don't have honest conversations. We don't have honest conversations with people that we're in a room with. We don't have honest conversations with people that we're online with. We don't listen to honest conversations. Like I dropped a little bit. I was listening to a Tara Palmieri yesterday. Don't remember the guy's name. He worked for the Bulwark. He now works for Axios. I posted about it. I gave some commentary. Um, if you're trivial, you're trivial. You know what I'm saying? So if I don't need to waste drawer space, I don't. But Tara Palmieri is great to me because she gets in the spaces that other people don't. Because so many people, they bring it into a like or dislike. Whereas to me, I feel like Tara Palmieri, she exists and people exist around her, and she doesn't have a problem asking questions that need to be asked. So, I'm listening to this dude, and like I said, he's from the Bulwark, which is neo-lib. He goes over to Axios. Axios is the new place where the White House leaks to, so that Axios looks like it's breaking a story, but in reality, it's somebody trying to create a dynamic of a story, which is either a flashbang to get you away from something else, or it's a diversion, to bring you over to this spot. I'm listening to dude. He talks about Angie Dixon, anyway, Florida. And what I appreciate is listening to her. She uses my favorite language, folks. What is folks? Folks is anybody can open up their mouth and speak a common parlance that anybody else can understand. And that's Angie down there in Florida. So I'm listening to, she does not acknowledge the DSA. She does not recognize the DSA as being part of her propagation. She does not recognize the DSA as part of her identity. She speaks for Florida, the District of Floridians that she speaks to. And this guy who's being interviewed by Tara Palmieri, this guy who worked for the Bulwark, this guy who is now at Axios, he goes, and Angie, who was DSA, is not DSA, is now DSA, but now she is not DSA. And as soon as I heard him do that flippity, I was like, oh, hell no. She, the woman you are talking about, says no. She, the woman that you were talking about, says, I do not identify as this. They have this. I am this. And what pissed me off about this gentleman was the fact that in spite of her identifying herself, her campaign, running a campaign, winning the campaign, he had to walk in like loops to bring back the DSA tag onto this woman. So all these people who won on a progressive message that's common sense to the common citizen, food, shelter, clothing, medicine, education. That's common, dude. My entire life, mind you, I was born in 77. I grew up elementary school in the 80s. I did high school in the 90s. My entire life, I have known food, shelter, clothing, education, and medicine are the basic needs of life. But somehow that's a organization's message. That's not our message. I run a short haircut because I find barbershop conversations impersonal and I don't like them. They give me anxiety that I got to sit there and have somebody ask about my day, what I'm doing later. I'm not going to fucking see you for 3 weeks. And I'm probably going to have the exact same fucking conversation. So I clip my hairs on my own because I don't like feeling hair touching my ears. In order to do that, I wear a hat to protect my head from the elements, to keep my head dry, to keep my head protected and not burned so I don't bump it on shit. There's reasons why we do simple things. To me, that's the value of the clothing. I was homeless. I lived in a car that I drove Uber in. The back seat was big enough that I could stretch out about 80%. I'm a little guy. Yes, I had shelter, but I wasn't making money where I could afford a roof over my head. You understand what I'm saying? I literally bought a tent. I literally bought a sleeping bag. So if the weather was permitting, I could stretch out. I could exist. I knew where all the campgrounds were locally. I don't look at a parking lot. I'm pointing back this way because that's right there is the direction of the Market 32 parking lot. That if I was in that situation in this area right now, that's where I would be sleeping. That's how I see parking lots, Walmart parking lots, Market 32, grocery stores, because you're not going to park up by the door. You're going to park kind of out in the back because you don't want people walking around. One time I parked too close to the Price Chopper, and a young guy who was working overnight knocked on my window. You can't be here. Like I had never been more upset, not because of my situation. I was not embarrassed. But this young fuck who's working for barely minimum wage had his dick out to come and tell me, a grown ass man who was just trying to sleep in my own car, that this parking lot that he did not own was not responsible for, was just too small for me to be able to take a nap in. You know what I mean? I think about that. We teach privilege. We teach caricatures. When I was growing up, and I'm going to say, I always cite the Judgment Night soundtrack. The Judgment Night soundtrack was where rap and rock converged. Onyx and Biohazard, Anthrax and Public Enemy. I cite that as a defining moment. Is that the moment? No, that's just the moment I use. Because hybridization had begun. White kids who listened to rock wanted to rap too. Vice versa. I mean, fuck, Theo and Cockroach were metalheads in the first episode of Cosby. Before Judgment Night soundtrack, like I say, that's my 90s pivot. You watch TV, you related to a character. You emulated that. You listened to music. You liked the character. You emulated that. That's why you'd have your tight jeans, black tee, long hair, metalheads. That's why you'd have your basketball jersey, football jersey wearing logo, team affiliated colors. You would see somebody and identify with them. You would see TV and identify with a character. And that's how you would emulate. You see a movie and you would emulate it. You know what I'm saying? Like I says, I'm going to be 49 this year. I'm going to be 49 this year. We had Bill Murray. We had, I'm drawing a blank because I think about him all the time. Who was the guy that played The Fly? Anyway, we had characters, and then in the 90s, you had like your sillier characters, like your Adam Sandlers and your Chris Farleys. And then that was the 90s. And then now we are here in the 2000s, where you had your Ashton Kutchers, your no, actually, as we got into the 2000s, we stopped having the sillies. Bruno, thank you, Jeff, Goldblum. Um, but in the 80s, you had your leads. You had the Police Academy movies. You had the Ghostbusters movies, the Stripes. And who was the coolest guy? The guy was not the guy you visibly saw was cool. The guy who was cool when shit got stupid. That was the people that we had. The guys that had the clean one-liner. You know what I mean? The guys who had that immediately that could kind of break a fourth wall in a way where there's the culture and then this one person walks into it silly. I mean, I think about Richard Pryor as another guy that I think of like that. We had people to watch. You had your sitcom series to watch. You know what I'm saying? The underdog, not just the underdog, the anti-hero, which leads us into 2000s, because in the 2000s, what became the emulation? The white people had of representation. What did white people have to watch? In the 90s, I am where I am because I grew up watching Spike Lee. I grew up watching Bill Cosby. I grew up listening to the Blast Master KRS-One. I grew up in a time, in the decade, in the 2 decades, because we sleep on the 70s. We talk about the 60s as being civil rights. We sleep on the fact that the 70s created a dynamic that when I was born in 77 and I grew up in the 80s, I was experiencing black people, black culture, black music, black people talking about black people. On Bill Cosby, we don't recognize the amount of black American royalty that was paraded in front of us episodes at a time. We don't understand the amount of Africana studies that were presented to us, white America, who were taught this is how it was by the spirit of 76. You know what I mean? We have neglected to learn that the 90s was the civil rights era, speaking through young people, speaking through young people to a next generation of young people. When I'm listening to Karen Hunter, when I'm listening to Greg Carr, when I'm listening to Ta-Nehisi Coates, all from Howard, when I'm listening to them, when I'm listening to Michael Harriot, they grew up watching the same TV I did. They grew up experiencing Martin. They grew up experiencing Salt and Pepper. They grew up experiencing Herbie the Love Bug the same way that I did. You know what I'm saying? From the radio. Bruno, let me tell you something funny about Benson. I get the Benson theme song stuck in my head all of the fucking time. Benson is my show only because Odo from Deep Space Nine, Star Trek, of course, was played by Rene Auberjonois. I don't know. I call him Odo. But that's the reason that Benson sticks in my head. Because dun, 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 all fucking day. Bing! That's my day. I grew up watching Mario Van Peebles. I grew up watching Rock, where they would go live to show you what. Thank you, Auberginois. What Rock, where they would have like Garrett Morris. You know, we watch Firefly, and and on Firefly, the preacher Book is played by the guy who played Cliff Huxtable's dad, and so I kind of get a kick out of this because on Firefly, Book is an amazing, amazing character because while he is solemn and quiet, his history comes from rebellion and fight. Take this back to the Cosby Show. We were introduced to kente cloth. We were introduced to blues. The whole reason, and I'm going to say, boop, I opened this door by pulling a pin. I knew nothing about jazz, but I was kind of falling into a discovery of sample era music. I done heard the rap that I grew up with, but I wanted to hear the samples. Boy, if you want to see one big sample and you listen to the song and you're like, yo, man, that's Public Enemy. And then you listen to a few more. Oh, man, that's Eric B. and Rakim. Ashley's Roach Clip by the Soul Searchers. If you want a song that can unpack so much hip hop, that one song, Ashley's Roach Clip by the Soul Searchers. But I didn't know where to start hearing about jazz. Jazz in my head was always a three-piece, and you had your drum, you had your standing bass, and then you had your guy on guitar. In my head, or the guy on keys, in my head, that was jazz. But when I understood the grasp of jazz, it was different. But where did I discover? Bill Cosby. The Cosby Show has an episode where he has to go to a daycare, but he's on auction line trying to get a record, A Night in Tunisia. I didn't know where to start. I started there, A Night in Tunisia, and I Spotified a playlist from that. And from that, I started learning how much music I knew from the 90s, from sample era. But now I'm open up. I'll down Bird all day. You know what I mean? Like I just name dropped about the Soul Searchers. I'll Bob James. I'll Cal Jader. If you've ever heard the Tribe Called Quest Midnight Marauders and you went song to song and listened to it all the way through, you listened to Cal Jader Aquarius, because the transitional bumper of that entire album, Midnight Marauders by A Tribe Called Quest, is Cal Jader Aquarius. Bruno, I'm going to address that word woke. I don't do it. Woke is a concept. Being aware, staying woke is a term out of racism. And I'm not saying using the term woke is racist. I'm saying the contemporary punditry that uses the word woke is racist because it's not correct. It's not accurate. It's not used in the right context. Staying woke is recognizing that two people in a room upstairs are conspiring to get me off this couch. That is staying woke. Recognizing that a system that I live in is out to get me and people like me. That's staying woke, being aware. I talked about the Lily White primary. Staying woke means being aware that the candidate that the private club is putting up is not a candidate that serves me. Why can't we find an alternate candidate who has my interests of food, shelter, clothing on my back, medicine for when my body ails me, education to know the difference? You know what I'm saying? That is the value of being woke. Being woke, it isn't just letting gay people marry. Being woke isn't just a purple-haired white lady in upstate New York rallying for the freedom of Hispanic heritage people who are in ICE detention. That is not being woke. Being woke is being aware of the society that is built to elevate some people and keep others down. That is being woke. When I hear punditry change the meaning and definition of the word woke, and I hear people who know better in turn allow it, those are the people that get my criticism. Since June, my entire dynamic of Substack has changed. Well, Bruno, DEI is another thing. Buzzword, buzzword, buzzword. I don't use that because DEI is the inclusion of everybody. DEI is women. DEI is veterans. DEI is handicapped people. Did you notice I never mentioned any racial shit? Because that is DEI. The people who have adversarial conditions to get through their day, to get through society. That's DEI. The inclusion of those who are met with adversarial situations. It's all buzzwords and it means nothing. It means nothing. And this brings me back to DSA. And this brings me back to punditry. We talk, and what we say means nothing. Republicans are radical spenders and propagators of hate, yet we call them conservative. People who promote democracy and democratic values call these absolute radicals, absolute fucking radicals, conservative because they name legislation after it. With me, I'm 5'6". I weigh 160 pounds. I'm not a big guy. But if I started calling myself Big Dick and started calling myself Big Man at 5'6", at 160 pounds, and anybody can see I'm little, that makes no sense for people to call me that. But if I call myself that, and I get shirts, and I get all my socials to say it, and I get a few friends to say it, that is no different than the way that we sort around staying woke. That's no different than we sort around DEI. CRT is another one. Yes. Critical race theory exists. Yes. The entire American society is built so that Black people cannot advance. The current American media is built so that it is acceptable to be bigoted towards Muslims while providing fealty and loyalty to Israel, an ethno-state that is committing genocide that has nothing to do with the Torah. It has nothing to do with Judea. It has nothing to do with the practice of faith. Israel is claiming Jews the same way that Republicans, radical, extreme, are claiming conservatism. The DSA is an organization unto itself that has done no political work that made it to the mainstream media. The advent of Hassan Piker, a Muslim man who campaigned with another Muslim man, is an example of how bigoted our media environment is. If you are critical of Hassan Piker, I am not saying you're a bigot. If you have not watched Hassan Piker content, I'm saying you are a bigot. Shut your fucking mouth. You cannot be critical of a man of whom you have not experienced, or a man whom you have only listened to when the clips were provided to you. Hey, do you guys remember this guy? What was his name? Charlie Kirk. I remember when this motherfucker died. September. I call it Charlie Kirk Day. And why do I remember it? Because my kid's mom, because I'm politically vocal, took my children away from my visitation for 2 months until she was comfortable that I wasn't going to get shot in my local home. So Charlie Kirk. Everybody in my area went buck nuts. Oh, this poor man, Charlie Strong, freedom. They were flexing it. I wrote a piece where I took all of the comments and messages that people sent to me about what a piece of shit I am, and I put them together in like this Breakfast Club type of letter at the end. I find it hilarious. But what we're doing with Charlie Kirk, that everybody around this area said he was a good Christian man, civil rights leader, comparative to Martin Luther King. Those people who gave the benefit to Charlie Kirk on the Democratic progressive side, you all are doing the exact same thing in negation to Hassan Piker. I'm speaking in America. In America, we have American values. In America, we have an American culture. The way that religion was practiced in the old spaces is not how American faith is practiced, no matter how old it is. I do not want to hear about Muslims mistreating women. I just don't. I do not want to hear about Muslims abusing children. I just don't. As I said earlier, my Catholic family and friends around here practice as the book is, as their faith is, as their soul yearns to meet to a higher power. Same thing with my Jewish friends. They practice the Torah. They do their rituals. They do their thing. They are spiritually trying to please God as is provided in their faith. I do not propagate in things that I don't experience. I do not experience Muslims in any way beating their women or mistreating women or hurting children. I do not. I do not accept anecdotes from people from places that I don't exist and I don't experience, because that becomes a blanket everybody. And I'm saying you are not talking about the people who live near me. I'm a dip. Why did I come here? And I'm going to say this very clearly. We are not having honest conversations. The people that we tune into for the honest conversations while being open are not framing things in honest ways. If your person is calling somebody a DSA candidate, they are wrong. Correct them. They are all Democratic Party candidates who won a primary election to be on a Democratic ticket. Whoever claims them after the fact is up to the people who claim them. These candidates are not DSA candidates. They are approved by the DSA, but that doesn't mean they are DSA candidates. Nick Guyette approves of them. Why do you not call them Nick Guyette candidates? I have put as much investment in these people as the DSA has put in these candidates who are running on a Democratic ticket as paid for and fundraised by the Democratic Party. Get it? We listen to pundits say woke and they use it wrong, and then you say it wrong because you propagate what you heard, because media is not intended for you. When I'm watching black media, when I'm watching Roland Martin, Greg Carr, The Conscious Lee, Larry Daniel Favors, I watched an interview with KRS-One, Talib Kweli, and Tef Poe. They were speaking to people. When you were watching your punditry, and I say punditry because it is not journalism, y'all are the same as me. You just kick out a couple hundreds on your production. I want this to look like I'm a dude on the couch because I'm a fucking dude on the couch. I'm watching the clock because today's my day off. Tomorrow I start my work cycle again. Later today I have to go mow the fucking lawn. When I say that I am no different than the people who you are tuning into, the difference between me and them is I know that I'm just a fucking dude. One dude in one place, in a culture that is not the culture that you come from, no matter how close. New Jersey, Newark, New Jersey is not Hudson Falls, New York. Memphis, Tennessee is not Hudson Falls, New York. Fallbrook, California is not Hudson Falls, New York. So how can you tell me a blanket America when you can't even tell what fucking party a candidate runs from, and you can't tell me what fucking message that came out of that person's mouth, that individual person's mouth, that connected with the voters who pulled a lever on one fucking day? You give it credit to DSA. You give credit to Democrats. You give credit to everybody except for the fucking human being who went up on stage and went through media with a message that had food, shelter, clothing, medicine, and education at the forefront. You just want to package a boogeyman to talk about or defend. I'm Nick G. This is a couch. I'm Nick G, a dude on the couch. If you're going to believe in something, why not believe in me?